My name is Cynthia Shelton, as you guys know, and I'm a Solar System Ambassador volunteer for NASA. The SSA program began in 1997 with a handful of science educators, and there are now 1,000 SSAs all over the U.S. with the same mission to bring space exploration and innovation news to the public. We are given special access to training and materials that we're then able to present to you guys. And like swag too, like these cool meatball stickers. I don't know why they call them meatball, I guess because it's round. And two disclaimers, I'm not a scientist and I'm not an engineer, nor do I play one on TV. I am a writer and a presenter with a passion for this topic, and I have an ability to curate a cross-section of information and for this buffet that you're about to see. And if any opinions of mine sneak in, they are purely mine and not NASA's. I applied to be a Solar System Ambassador because I love learning about all things science and space, and sharing that knowledge with you is a great pleasure and a privilege. And I want to start by showing you the range of the NASA topics we could learn about together in the future, which is why it's important you fill out that little thing, that little sheet I gave you. If you go along as we start, just check off the boxes and you can write things in as well. And around the room you may also notice there's some lithos, and if there's anything on the planets that you're interested in, you can write those in as well. NEK-TV folks, if you represent a classroom or a school or a group and you want to talk about this later, please write to me at ssacynthia.shelton@gmail.com, and we can come up with a program that suits your group and their age as well. It can be anybody from 3 to 103. This is a great year to be doing NASA stuff. There's tons of stuff going on, and NASA emphasizes that all of us are needed for the goal to discover and expand knowledge for the benefit of humanity. And that's why this little kid, feeling very comfortable in the captain's chair at a Star Trek convention of 1975, and yes, I did shake Roddenberry's hand, although I couldn't say anything because I was so gobsmacked. I look very comfortable here, but I'm not going to be a captain of a starship, and I'm not going to be an astronaut. But I can do this, and this is So if you love this adventure too, NASA really wants all of us to participate in some way. There's probably some place or some way that you can participate too if you get excited about it. I'm a Trekkie, it's true, but there's science fiction and then there's also science fact. So the best place to go for your science fact, I think, is the nasa.gov website. And if you've never seen it, it'll take days to go through it. It's just endless what they're up to, and it's getting bigger all the time. So I encourage you to go on here, and there's some great videos and things that will catch you up really quickly. They're making it easier and easier because they're funded by the public. They're making it totally transparent. They want to tell us about it. They want us to know. They just celebrated their 60th anniversary in 2018, so you can imagine after 60 years how much stuff they have on there. And they are called the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, if you didn't know what NASA stood for. And it's an independent agency of the United States federal government responsible for the civilian space program, as well as aeronautics and aerospace research. So I just danger Will Robinson, it's a very addicting website. I kind of have been binge watching NASA TV. You see up there at the top, it says NASA TV. You can go on any time of day. There's usually something interesting on, from some old stuff from the 1950s, like reports from the 1950s, to brand new live on the spot. They just had a whole thing about one of the ladies who was the human calculator who helped make the missions go up. She just died recently. Yeah, okay. So some of my favorite topics include going to Moon and then Mars and how that's all going to work, and growing things in space, and building things on Mars with the natural environment, the regolith that's there. They're going to 3D print, they think, houses like this. That's an illustration. Top side right ones are illustrations still. That haven't happened yet. Artist rendition. Looks real. Looks like a photo. So if this is anything that you are interested in, please let us know. I'm here to stoke your intellectual curiosity with any of the topics that interest you. This is our planet. A lot of what NASA does is find out what is going on Earth, but from over 4 billion miles away. Doesn't look like much. That's in the circle there. That little tiny dot is Earth.
Wow.
As, you know, Voyager's going bye-bye. Yeah. Okay, so here's where you get your check sheet off. Humans in space is one of the topics which is obvious. It covers a lot. From how we get into space and daily activities like eating, how our bodies react to space and microgravity, what it does to our brains, our behavior. We could look at astronauts as individuals, how you become an astronaut. Women in space, Christina Cook just came back from almost a year in space. She's a fascinating individual. Could be all about women in space, or perhaps for Girl Scouts or for some other groups that feature girl power. I always love that. Then there's also the twins who went up in space, and there's a whole new range of exploration that's called omics, like what happens to your body when you're out there on a DNA level. And so they had this great opportunity. They had 2 astronauts who had identical, as close as you can come. And the guy on the right was the one who spent a year in space. You can see he's slightly taller than his brother, Mark, on the left. And Scott got elongated in space. He'll shrink down again, but his spine expanded, so he came back a little bit taller. And slightly younger.
That's what I need.
Yeah, but there's the thing about that. You're younger when you come back, but your body ages faster.
Oh.
So everything that happens to us down here happens to us out there, but faster.
Oh.
So omics is a brand new field that they haven't been able to study before about what's happening on a very cellular level to our bodies, and that's going to be important the longer that people are out in space finding out what happens to them. Okay, we can also look at the International Space Station, which I love, and to see how it was built, what work is being done there, how it was, who built it, and why it'll be decommissioned in 2024. It only has 4 more years left before they're decommissioning it. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with it. I don't know if they're going to take it apart, or it seems like they could use it for something. But at any rate, they're going to be building other things, and so that floating laboratory is not going to be maintained after another 4 years. Yes?
How big is that? Do you have any just?
Yes, well, there's from 4 to 9 people on it at any given time. Check off on your thing that you would like to know more about the space station, because that's a whole topic of
From 4
to 9 people can live on it, and you can get lost. And if you ever want to just really make your brain crazy, you can go online and watch the ISS in flight. So when they're not actually talking to Earth, you can see what it looks like from their windows at all times, real like live coverage. And then of course they get the sun, and their cycle is 45 minutes. So every 45 minutes it's a day. And they're going 17,000 miles an hour. Yes, it's huge, but it depends on what you consider huge. It's larger than your house. I just happen to know that. Okay, so where were we? So we can look at, there's research going on the International Space Station. The Commercial Crew Program is the people who are like SpaceX and Boeing and Northrop Grumman who are helping send stuff up. So they're sending up rockets and delivering cargo, and they're working on delivering people so that we don't have to depend on the Russians for delivering our astronauts. I mean, that's been great, but it's expensive, and it would be much better if we could do it off of our soil. So that's going to be happening soon. And then, of course, the NASA astronauts who have spent time there, and the low Earth orbit economy, which is an interesting concept that we're going to, capitalism in space, you know, what could be done up there? They're thinking about mining asteroids, they're thinking about setting up tourism. You know, there's going to be a hotel on the moon. Hard to imagine now, but it's going to happen. You know, they're going to figure it out. And people are saying they want to be buried in space. So just shoot.
Just shot out?
Yeah, I don't know how this can work.
I want to do that.
You know, maybe you get cremated and then you get sprinkled out the side window. I don't know. No blowback. Oh, wait. Not sure. Okay, so then, of course, moon to Mars. This is the thing that's happening in 2020. It's really exciting. You know how long it's been. There's some people in the room who were around the first time we went to moon, and it hasn't happened in a really long time. The reason we're going to moon first is because it's a stepping stone, and we got to practice. And as I was mentioning before we started, they're putting this train station out there. They're not calling it a train station. They're calling it a gate. And that's going to be how we get from Earth to the gate, and the gate to the moon, and then from the moon to Mars. So we got to stockpile some stuff so that it's not so difficult. Getting things out of gravity is really hard. So if we can make things in space, maybe a spaceship that is too large to build and launch, think Star Trek. You know, you've got to, if you build it like they did with the ISS, if you build it out in space, you don't have to worry how much it weighs, because you're floating. Okay, so here's some of the things. Studying Earth's moon, the commercial lunar payload services, that again is who gets the stuff up into the air. And there's going to be more and more people who are figuring out how to do this. The Lunar Gateway is that train station I'm talking about. Preparing people to go. There's a lot of stuff we need to know. The radiation is difficult, the bone density issues, just your mental state, figuring out how to be away from everything you know and everyone you know for long periods of time. And getting there, the SLS and Orion. SLS is the Space Launch System, which is the biggest rocket yet attempted, and Orion is the spacecraft that will carry the people and put it on the top, shoot them out in space. So, and then Mars today. A lot of what NASA does is look at Earth, because when you get back from something, you know, forest for the trees, you get back and you can see what's actually happening. This is the tropical storms in the Western Hemisphere. They watched, you know, they watched Australia burn. They watch how floods are happening and what happens after a flood in an area, how you're losing continent, or how there's more and more landslides, or whole trees are wiped out, or how people lose their electric during a blackout after a flood, or wind evidence of loss of electricity, so that the emergency services can go out to those places and they know where it's been affected. So here we go. Here's lovely European cities at night. That's a pretty busy place. Lots of lights. You can see where the cities are. So the air, the climate, the hazards, waters, oceans, and ice, watching that ice melt and keeping an eye on it. They've been taking pictures repeatedly to see what the changes are, so they have real data. What's happening to the land? What are the benefits of having somebody looking down and keeping an eye on us? Earth expeditions, there's stuff going on here, like trying to figure out how to live in habitats in desolate places like the Arctic or the deserts, or really harsh conditions that we have, which are the closest we can get to another planet. Addressing global challenges, hurricanes, Earth research findings, and global precipitation. All of that, if you're interested in weather and climate, this would be a topic to check off. This is the SLS from an artist's perspective. It's going off to the moon with the little white capsule up at the top. So there are tons of missions, and to me this is the most exciting, because this is where people have cooked up this idea of what they want to do. It's just a vision, and then they actually make it happen. So here are just some of the missions going on. The International Space Station, the Hubble Space Telescope, the Curiosity Mars rover, which, by the way, that's the Curiosity Mars rover right there. It's real, and it took its own picture. That's a selfie. The first selfie taken from Mars, and it did it itself. Somebody came up with the idea, hey, we should get a picture, and they made an extra arm so it could hold the camera out.
How big is that?
You know, check it off on your box, and I'll tell you all about it some other time.
Okay.
That's a tease.
So now I got a question you may not be able to answer either. Maybe not so much for Mars, but do they consider the device landing on some type of life, either on Mars, some other planet, or, you know, I mean, that's really one of the purposes of space travel, isn't it, seeing if there's life?
Yes, that's one of the big questions that NASA is exploring is, are we alone? You know,
But, I mean, what happens if this thing lands on a community, or a community, whatever the community is, wherever it goes?
well, it's already there. In
No.
fact, they say that Mars is the only planet totally inhabited by robots. Right? But yes, they are looking, I mean, anywhere there's water, and it used to be that they say, oh, there's no water out there, and now they're finding water everywhere. And where there's water, presumably, there's a possibility of life. And yes, there are people concerned with not damaging indigenous bacteria. So yeah, there's a whole extra arm. It has the unfortunate acronym PP, which is planetary protection. But that's so they do this whole, they have a whole system where they're trying not to take their bacteria and leave it, but if you think about it, somebody said, you know, 80% of us is some biome, which we didn't know that long ago. 80% of us is not us, it's some other little microorganisms living. You're only 20% you, Jeannie. and
Sometimes that's less.
if we go live on one of these planets, how are we not going to sneeze something into action? You know, there's no way we're not going to leave little bits of ourselves everywhere.
How long has that been there?
If you want to check that off on your box, I'd be happy to go into that in detail. But I do love this topic, so
That is just.
it is so cool,
It's
and
mind-blowing.
it's not the only one.
Really? Didn't know that.
Well, that's the one that had a limited lifetime and it's been going on for
Oh,
years
several
and years.
of these robots have that, where they're like, oh, this will last 2 years, and then 13 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, right, so the probes, the Artemis program that's going to Mars, the commercial crew, Juno mission at Jupiter, OSIRIS-REx, the James Webb Space Telescope going up, Pluto and beyond. So there's tons and tons of stuff going on right now and in our immediate future, and then of course there's all the old stuff. So we just had an anniversary for the time that John Glenn did his first triple orbit. And I just watched a film of that, where they now have so much great data that you can look up and watch a little video for half an hour about specific missions that happen, and it makes my hair stand up on end when I watch them, just because it's amazing what they did then with nothing, with less than what this is capable of, less than what your key fob for your car is capable of, is what they're saying now. It's not even a cell phone, they had less computer power than a key fob. So that's why they're aiming high. So then there's robots and other space tech. This thing that looks like a milk crate is actually flying around. It's mapping the location of the space junk. You're like, space junk? Because yeah, there's a lot of space junk out there, space debris. Think about it, 60 years of sending things up and things breaking, and everything's moving 17,500 miles an hour in different directions in different orbits. And you'd think that little paint chips or bolts or love your reaction. Doesn't it look like it's covered with fleas that are jumping? Anyway, so there's a joke in the science fiction community that when, intelligent life goes by a planet, they're like, oh, no, let's not go there. They throw their trash. Right, but things break. Right, and so paint chips and little bolts and stuff can still break. It's like the gyre. Yeah, kind of like that. So there's somebody working on like a vacuum in space. It's gonna suck up all a little bit. Yeah, to try to figure out this is a whole other pollution problem. Yes.
Wouldn't that like massively interfere with this Starlink thing?
The Starlink is part of the problem.
Yeah, because that's thousands of satellites, right?
Yes. Starlink, for those of you who don't know, is what SpaceX is shooting up in the air and is trying to make like a garland of satellites all around the Earth so that in low orbit, so closer in, not way, way out, so that those of us in Vermont, for instance, can have internet. People in rural places or very way out places can still have internet connection.
Is this higher than that, or?
It's all, I mean, look at the range, so,
Yeah.
so, you know, low Earth orbit is very low. It's,
Oh.
and there's some people who don't consider it space, real space.
Ah, okay.
So that, the low Earth orbit economy that they're trying to build up is gonna be, the thing's gonna be flying around. And it's not just the US, it's not just NASA. There are all these other countries, I've totally lost my space here. Okay, here we go. They estimate more than 500,000 pieces of debris out there. And it's tracked by that little milk crate. Wally!
Give me a smile.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So there's plenty of, this is where the planet protection comes up because they don't want to do this to other planets.
There's even a Hasselblad camera floating around the Earth.
Who put that out there?
It was one of the early, it wasn't an Apollo mission, it was Gemini.
Oh, yeah.
And the astronaut was doing a spacewalk.
Oh, and he
let go
lost
of the
it.
camera and he
Oh.
said, it's
Oh,
gone.
right, I heard about that. And then so if anybody ever picks that up, they'd have all this good
It's
footage.
probably still
It's
there.
probably preserved, you know, it's airless. Well, and then there's that car's out there. But that car's going on an orbit that's going to Mars. He's sending it to Mars, I think. But that would be an opinion and not NASA's opinion. Okay, so, here's some other cool tech stuff. How do you tell time and how do you navigate in space? And how do you tell time in space? Because on the planet, you can fix your point from wherever you are, and there's GPS on the ground, and you have a watch on your hand, which, you know, you can figure out what time the sun is going to be where, but you can't do that in space, and all the stars are changing depending on where you go. So they're trying to make this deep space atomic clock, which I think is fascinating. I would like to know more about. Space travel, living in space, the manufacturing materials. They're sending up these little bots they're training them to think for themselves and to 3D print habitats. So before anybody gets there, there's already going to be, these little bots have made, like little ants made little termite piles. You can see videos of all of this. And they have to learn how to, you know, like if one of them, say there's 100 of them, and one of them kind of loses its batteries or gets covered with dust and stops working, then you have to kick it aside and say, okay, I'm going to do your job now. We're going to scoop dirt, and you guys are going to mash it down. And they build. But that means they're like AI, they're totally self, I don't know, it's cool and it's creepy at the same time.
Is this on the moon or Mars?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out, I mean, basically if you have water, the regolith is like a cement. You mix the two and
Wow.
they're having contests all the time about who can make the coolest habitat on either planet. They've got some winners going on. So the clock, supersonic accelerator, had to go up off the planet, I had to come down and not break anything. Ooh, they sent me stuff in my email about the latest NASA. You can get this too. You can sign up for NASA News and they send you things like, hey, why don't you help us design the next little robot that's going to go to Mars? We need another one, but we need good ideas of how to make it. So they're doing things like looking at gecko toes, which have bazillion little hairs, which is why they can climb up a slick wall. And they're trying to figure out how to manufacture gecko toes for their little bots that are going places so it can crawl up a rock face. Wouldn't that be scary though? You show up on some planet and it's like, opinion line. Okay. Launches and landings. This is, of course, the SpaceX Falcon 9 with the Dragon cargo. I love watching launches. I'm a launch junkie. And I think it would be cool if we knew it was happening at a reasonable time, not 3 in the morning, say, but to see it on the big screen and like have it be a party. You know, a little launch party, 10 in the morning, bring your coffee, and talk about it afterwards, see how it goes. It's SpaceX particularly does a really fine job.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, this might sound like a random question, but has NASA or any scientists do any studies to see if the launches is part of the water, damage the ozone layer, or has anybody?
I'm sure they are. They're trying to make all of that cleaner all the time because they're plenty aware that every time something goes up, there's consequences. So that could be something you might have. This is just the buffet. We're not doing entrees now. Okay, so these are some of the 2020 missions, and some of these have already gone up. So there's plenty of stuff going on, and there's a calendar you can get online of all the NASA stuff. But what's really funny is when a launch is scrubbed, it disappears off the calendar, like it never happened. Like, wait a minute. It doesn't say scrubbed; it just moves to a new date. So I have my own paper calendar, so I know. Solar systems and beyond. So I have all these pictures around the room to sort of get you excited. It turns out that there are planet junkies. Like there are people who love a particular planet, Venus or Jupiter. Those would be the Jupiter groupies. I love that. So if you happen to have a particular planet or microplanet or dwarf planet, such as Pluto, that you want to know more about, we've got all kinds of possibility to do that. There's also the search for life and exoplanets. There's your question about the search for life. Astrobiologists, that's what they do. The sun, of course, the sun is the source of all life. Stars and galaxies, black holes, dark energy. Did you know that Dark Energy Day is Halloween? The physicists have taken over Halloween for Dark Energy Day. And then they took over, black hole people took over the day after Thanksgiving, so it's Black Hole Friday. So people who study those things kind of celebrate their day, don't go shopping, talk about black holes. Asteroid and Comet Watch, planetary defense. It's not just people on the planet that we're worried about, it's like the things coming down. So say there's an asteroid coming straight at the Earth, instead of allowing it, oh look, I wonder when that's going to hit. We could send something up to kind of push it away. They can keep track of these things now. And astronomy events. So I've already found one guy who has a totally underused telescope. We could do something in conjunction with the planetarium in St. J, or we could get this guy to lend us his telescope and go out somewhere during an event and take a look at it. There are so many orbiters and satellites now that they call it a fleet. All of those little names, which you can't read because they're too small, is another little thing with a different little job. And they're around the planets that they're looking at. So Earth has its own little orbiters and satellites that are looking at particular things, weather or what kind of, trying to figure out the spectrometers. They've got these spectrometers now, which I think is like a tricorder, Star Trek tricorder, in my opinion. Which basically is trying to tell you from a distance what something's made up of. They use the, well, it's got, so much oxygen, so much. Citizen science. There's lots of ways for regular people to get involved, and these are just things you can click on the NASA website. They've got, there's the link to look at that. Science is for a day, things for kids, things for grown-ups, and there's also several blogs for education. Little tiny kids can get involved and go on. Very exciting. NASA spin-offs. This is, they have a little magazine. For 40 years, they've been tracking all the spin-offs, things that were designed for space, but actually have practical application on Earth. So you're like, well, what are these people doing? MIMO, which is a great acronym. You have to have great acronyms. Let me see. MIMO stands for NASA Extreme Environment Mission Operations. They have an underwater habitat called Aquarius in Florida at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. And astronauts, or rather aquanauts, go down there and they try to have an analog or parallel experience. So they're pretending that's space, and they're doing all the same things they would do if they were in the space station. only underwater. And so what this guy is doing here is he's doing a test, the psychomotor vigilance task test, which, again, the acronym PVT. And there are companies that have paid for this test, and they use it on people who do something very hard and dangerous for periods of time to see how their attention span holds up and if they're being safe. So to figure out how long a person can do a thing before it becomes unsafe. So they're underwater doing some tests, and they got all these little, more rovers, underwater rovers. You just like the ATV thing. Okay, so they deal with emergencies. I love the idea. I'd love to know more about the aquanauts, because just the idea that people are living for periods of time underwater is trippy to me. So, and here's a long list of some of the spin-offs. There's like 1,500 plus examples. Anybody got a memory foam bed? So the camera on your smartphone, the thing that allows it to change the direction, that was designed for one of the astronauts, they tell me, because they needed it for navigation, or they needed to have it go both ways. Enriched baby formula, precision GPS, shock absorbers for buildings and bridges, advanced water filtration, which of course is needed on Earth, invisible braces, cardiac pumps, and food safety standards and prepackaged foods. Everything that goes up to the ISS, for instance, is prepackaged. So the way the astronauts who are going decide what they want to eat ahead of time. It's like, okay, you're going for 3 months, you have to get 3 months worth of food. They go to the cafeteria and they eat the food there, and they're like, well, I really like the turkey with gravy. So they're like, okay, how many do you want? Oh, I like one every week. Okay, so then they prepackage them in this sealed thing, and then everything that you order is got your code on it. And if you look up Mike Massimino, who's an astronaut from the old shuttle days, he has a funny story about saying, well, you know, if I'm going to be leaving soon and I see that I don't have any pudding left and I need a pudding, I didn't do this, but I might take off the code of the other person and sort of swap the stickers. But of course I didn't do that. Oh dear.
Want no Domino's?
No, although they did get a pizza. They did get pizza, some Georgian pizza, from the ISS. NASA is not without a sense of humor. They made a bunch of posters, travel posters. Mars! Mars! You can look these up online, you can actually print them out and put them up on your walls. They're classic. I really like this because of course he's got the dog and he's looking like he's having a good time. And because he has the dog, I thought, well, I'd like to take my dog to space. So, notice he's in the Cat's Paw Nebula. This, by the way, is an app you can get on the Nest. So you can self-photo yourself into one of these beautiful shots that they took, that the Spitzer Space Telescope took, which now is decommissioned. So, we're almost done. This, if you want to be in the astronaut suit, in the month of March, coming up, they are accepting applications for astronauts. Here's what you have to do. March 2nd to 30th, apply. And if you're a kid out there in TV land, this is what you want to aim for. So a master's degree in a science, technology, engineering, or math field, or 2 years work towards a STEM PhD program, or a doctorate in medicine or osteopathic medicine, or completion of a test pilot school program by June 2021. Or 2 years of related experience, or 1,000 hours of jet aircraft pilot and command time, and you have to be a U.S. citizen.
Well, that was a question I've been sitting here thinking about. Does each crew member have to know how to pilot some type of aircraft? Maybe it's a moot point right now because we don't have a shuttle, or some type of shuttle. But when we did, every member have to have his or her a pilot's license.
Yeah, so watching the old stuff, like the training that astronauts used to get is so different than what they have now. And back in Neil Armstrong's day, say, all of the people going up had a job that they were looking at. They were helping with a particular department. And nowadays, and then they got a little annoyed because they were being left out of the loop and it was more automatic, but the people who were actual pilots said, if I'm going to be in this thing, I need to know how to manually operate it in case something goes wrong. I really want to know how to override a system if it's not functioning right and how to steer this thing. So that's another great question of how much of this is going to be automatic. Now here's a total opinion of mine. These automatic steered cars that were coming up, just down on the ground, I think that they are trying to prepare us for the idea that we are not steering anymore, that we're going to have to allow the computer to take us wherever and trust it. Because it just seems like a natural, we're not going to be able to steer in space at 17,000 miles an hour. We're not going to be able to react that fast. We're going to need the computers much more than we do now because it's just a different environment.
Are there redundant ground controls? Suppose if there's a fire in NASA and it burns off half the facility, then what?
NASA is famous for having redundant systems.
Right.
And actually, one of the things that just went up in the Cygnus Northrop Grumman capsule, or one of the experiments, is a fire in space. They want to see what happens when they set fire things in space. So if there's that in space rather than on the ground, they're working on figuring out how to contain it, because fire doesn't stretch out like it does. It turns into a ball,
Right.
which blows my mind as well. It's like, what? Like if you have a candle in space, it's a little round ball. It doesn't do that wick thing. That would be a great thing to discover. That's a little bit more in depth than I know right now, but I do know they do redundant stuff, and I think they are trying to make sure that they study, the people who go study as much of this stuff as possible. And the training of astronauts is amazing and incredible.
Because, the backup for landing is Edwards.
Well, there's 10 different NASA sites around on the coast, and one of them being JPL in Pasadena. But so there's lots of different, there's groups. So like when the Northrop Grumman went up, there was an NG group, and then there was a NASA group, and there's all these different commands, and they all have to take their turn, and they divide up the labor of how to guide the thing and who does what. So it's very well organized, I have to say. Impressed with that piece of it. Again, this is Jim Bridenstine, who's the NASA administrator. We are going to do this thing. We're going to send the first woman and next man to the moon by 2024. And I did find a talk that he did where he said, well, maybe 2 women will go. That'd be cool too.
How close are they to finalizing a ship?
So in 2024, the ISS is going to be decommissioned because the gateway is going to be ready. So they said. So there's going to be to the moon in 2024. And after that, I think it's 2030 that they want to have somebody on Mars. People actually.
When?
2024. So 4 years from now on the moon to stay. Not just a camping trip where you go down and grab some cool rocks and come home again. Staying. So they're doing a whole lot. This is an amazing time. This is like the 60s have come back again. There's an urgency, there's a will, there's an excitement in the air, and I am really, really proud and pleased to have some little tiny piece of it. So tell your friends, if they want to, this is my last slide, tell your friends if they want to know more to please write to me at ssacynthia.shelton at gmail.com, and I'll put that on the bottom of the screen again. And if you'd like, there's a little 3-minute video of We Are Going. This is the tagline they're using now. We are going. Yes.
Do you think they will put a person, I'm 71 years old, do you think in my lifetime they will put someone on?
Yes, and it depends on how long you decide to live.
105.
Absolutely. They're going to Mars.
Within 30 years.
Absolutely. I do. I believe that. Wow. My opinion. But yeah, hang around.
Would you do that?
I feel like I'm too old to go. But
I go, and I'm old enough to be your mother.
well, if they're looking for, 60-somethings who they want to see what happens to you when you haven't had any astronaut training. I just feel a little fragile for this adventure. But you never know, ask me in 10 years.
Some of these ideas might seem far-fetched,
Yeah.
but, 30, 40 years ago, who knew you could have,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you could have-
hold this in your pocket, absolutely.
like the Jetsons had vision phones, whatever they call them, and that's gonna happen. Hello?
Check out some of the early Netflix Star Trek in '68.
Yeah.
They had actual, so there's this one episode where they go back to Earth in 1968, they go back in time, and it's actual 1968 footage of, McKinley and the rockets going up. And so if you think about it, it's a 1968 Hollywood talking to a 1968 audience with 1968 technology. And they've got an Alexa on the counter talking. They've got, you spot the things that we have now that in '68 were just science fiction.
Sure.
And my skin is crawling again.
It's those little white things.
Sometimes science fiction becomes science fact.
It absolutely
And lots
does.
of
Beam me
times-
up, Scotty, this is it.
Lots of times the ideas in science fiction, people look at that and say, yeah, we could make something. And it gives ideas.
There's a lot inspired by that. That's no joke. So this is just, this is the ambition, and it's William Shatner speaking.
50 years ago, we pioneered the path to the moon.